In 3, 2, this is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 724, recorded on Wednesday, June 5th, 2019. Mind the gap, science. Hey, everybody, welcome to This Week in Science. Tonight we have... Hey, everybody, I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on This Week in Science, we will fill your head with babies, pain, and curiosities. But first...
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. Most of the things we have invented over the last 100,000 years of humans being on the earth are still with us in some form. The wheel, the push hook, the elastic band, and touch screens, to name just a few. Fire, on the other hand, is much older than the last 100,000 years. It is a technology older than current humans by 1 million years or more. When a thing is useful, when knowledge has a benefit, it is preserved, handed down, as if knowledge were a living organism, reproducing through teaching, sharing, and learning, the exchange of information from one generation to the next. And, like any living thing, knowledge can also die if we fail to teach or if we fail to learn. We humans look at the world of today as if it is a permanent place. It is not. It will change. Based on the lessons we have learned and the new discoveries we make, the world will change for the better. And it can also change by the knowledge we fail to nurture in the next generation for the worse. Like any living thing, knowledge needs a healthy environment, like the one between your ears, and something good to munch on, like This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I wanna learn everything. I wanna fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I wanna know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
And a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We are back again, to talk about science. Yes, there is so much news once again that, of course, we were throwing the stories away, saying, not good enough, not good enough. And we've brought the best stories, the stories we loved the most for this week's conversation. So I hope that you will enjoy them. I have stories about gaps, cats, and guts. I do. I hope you look forward to that. Justin, what'd you bring?
I have got a giant virus. I've got a reason people should be picking up the pace, and lost tribe of ancient humans.
Ooh, lost tribe. I like that. Blair, what's in the animal corner?
The animal corner is filled with peas, pain, the phylum Porifera, and puddles.
And plosives. Lots of plosives. Great for radio. Plosives.
You're welcome, everyone.
And as we enjoy getting into all this fun, I would like to remind you that you can find information about TWIS at twis.org. And as a podcast, we are found all places podcasts are found. You can also find us on Facebook and YouTube. But now, I'm going to fast forward into science news. It's what y'all came here for, right? Well, I'm going to take you into a stellar nursery right now. We always wonder what happens. We have this hypothesis about how solar systems form. What happens around stars as they age to allow planets that we see in our own solar system and that we see as exoplanets, the hundreds, thousands that we've found now. I mean, there have not been a lot that we've visibly imaged over the years where we've actually gone, hey, baby planet. I'm going to look at you, little planet. These exoplanets. So out of Hubble this week, there is the story of a new planetary system. It orbits around a star, which is about 370 light years from Earth. You know, it'd be like Gilligan's 3-hour tour, give or take a few hundred years, to try and get there. It's known as PDS 70, and it is a 6 million year old star. So it's little
Oh,
and
it's a
it's
little
young.
baby star.
Yeah,
It's a
it's
little baby star.
it's
You are.
tiny.
You
It's a
are.
it's a
You're a little
cute
baby star.
Yeah, exactly. It's a cute little baby star, smaller than our sun, so it's not really hot. It's accreting a lot of gas, and so we have these ideas, right? We've seen in space these disks of dust and gas that extend around these little proto-stars, these stars that are maybe creating planetary systems, these protoplanetary systems from which we think planets must emerge. And from looking at our own planet's planetary system, our solar system, and also the rings of Jupiter, we have come up with this hypothesis that planets accrete. That means they gather the material from around themselves within their orbit. And so there should be gaps. There should be bands of blank space, dust-free, gas-free space in these protoplanetary disks. And we really haven't seen them before. But lo, looking at PDS 70, we have now discovered gaps, big gap. There's one that extends from about 2 billion to almost 4 billion miles away from its star. So there's dust, dust, dust until about 2 billion miles away from the star, and then clear space. And there's a planet. There are 2 planets, little baby planets inside this dust gap. And the innermost planet, they think it's at about a distance of 2 billion miles, about the orbit of Uranus from our star. And they think it weighs about 4 to 17 times as much as Jupiter. So it's bigger than Jupiter. It's out there, and it's a big thing. It was detected in 2018. There's another one that's newly discovered, and it's near the outer edge of this gap at about 3.3 billion miles, about Neptunian distance from the sun. It's not so big. It's around Jupiter mass, not much bigger. I mean, it could be 10 times bigger than Jupiter, but it probably isn't. It's right around Jupiter size. And so these orbits have what's thought to be a 2-to-1 resonance, where the inner planet goes around the star 2 times for every time that outer planet goes around 1 time. But this is the first direct evidence that supports our protoplanetary disk planet formation hypothesis, which is pretty cool. This is the first time that we have seen this gap and planets that are unambiguously creating that gap around a star within its dust and gas disk. That's kind of neat. It puts a lot of support to this idea. It's very exciting. Very exciting. Researchers are thrilled that the James Webb Space Telescope that may be launching in a couple of years might be able to study this planet and others to be able to figure out more about these newly forming planets. We get to watch as they grow up. These are toddlers to our view, which is very exciting. I mean, we're going to have pretty long lives to really watch them and see what they're doing, but still, we can get our snapshot.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, little babies. We found little babies. Mind the gap because it's important. Could be planets in there. And then moving on from babies, let's go to kitty cats because babies and kitty cats are such a wonderful combination.
We're trying to break the
space.
internet. Is that what this is about?
I am. This show. Let's break the internet. I should rename the show Science. Let's break the internet. Yes.
Yeah.
First babies, baby planets. Now cats. Schrödinger's cats. We're going to talk about quantum physics now, everyone, which means, wow, okay, I'm jumping out of my depth a little bit. But, all right, quantum computers. We would like quantum computers. There are a number of companies that are working on quantum computers. We would like quantum computing because it will increase processing time. It will also increase security for encrypted communications. There's so much that quantum computing could potentially do for us. However, these computers, while we're getting them going and we're increasing the number of qubits that are processing at any point in time in the computers, one of the big problems is errors. They are very prone to errors. Qubits just go, I'm going to jump and turn into some random state. And nobody knows when they're going to jump, why they're going to jump, or what they're going to jump to until possibly now. So researchers at Yale University. What just happened? Is that me? Did you hear that?
Yes,
No.
I heard that. That's a ghost in the internet. That's what that is.
What?
No,
I
I
heard
don't
not-
know.
It's because we were talking about quantum computing.
I didn't hear it.
Ghost in
Oh,
the
it was
internet.
spooky.
Spooky action at a distance, everyone. Researchers at Yale University have been looking into quantum computing, quantum particles, these qubits, and the idea of superposition. And so we go back to Schrödinger and his cats with the idea that, the story is, hey, Schrödinger's thought experiment is you could put a cat into the box. You don't know what's going on in the box. When you open the box, is the cat alive or is it dead? It's going to be either of those things when you observe it. And of course, we know with quantum physics, observation is the key, right? Observing makes something happen. But it can be alive and dead at the same time, the superposition of opposite states while nobody's observing it. And so these researchers, Michel Devoret and Zlatko Minev, they've been working at this idea of quantum jumps. And quantum jumps are these what are considered discrete, so a very singular thing happening, but random change in the state of an atom, of a particle, at particular time when it's observed. It's random in that it can't be predicted how it's going to turn out. You don't know whether the cat is alive or dead. And so the quantum qubits that we're talking about, they put together an experiment in which they had an artificial atom, which I think is a very interesting concept in and of itself. It's a superconducting artificial atom. They used 3 microwave generators to irradiate the atom, and they encapsulated the whole thing in aluminum. So it's surrounded in aluminum, getting irradiated with microwaves, and you have this superconducting atom, and they
at this
use
point, if no science comes out of it, it's still really cool.
it's just all these things, exactly. But they used an indirect monitoring method to be able to observe without really observing. And this is something that Minev came up with for superconducting circuits. It allows them to observe the atom with even more efficiency than they have ever had before. Okay, so this microwave radiation is coming in, irradiate. They're watching, and the atom's like, I don't know what to do. And it jumps. And so they got these quantum, I got to do something, jumps. And so the atom's like, oh, you're watching me. Here I go, jumping. And what they found is that they could amplify the signal of these jumps. And in doing that, they could monitor the signal, and they found that there's this period of time right before the jump in which they stopped detecting photons, which is part of their whole setup. And there are photons in this other part of the microwave setup. But they stopped detecting them for just a briefest moment. And what they realized is that the lack of atoms, the absence of the lack of photons is a warning signal that a quantum jump is going to happen. Which is exciting because they're observing it. They now know when it's going to happen. And because they know when it's going to happen, they can now take that jump. And so they go, there you go. I see where you went. And they can reverse it. And they can tell the atom to go back to where it was. You just go back there. You get back there. They found that quantum jumps are deterministic. The quantum state may be undetermined and random to begin with, but the jump is always deterministic. It always happens in the same way from whatever random starting point the bit starts from. So the researcher Minev, he says quantum jumps of an atom are somewhat analogous to the eruption of a volcano. They're unpredictable in the long term. However, with correct monitoring, you can with certainty detect advance warning of a disaster and act on it before it's occurred. So why is this research important? It means that now researchers may have a way of knowing when these quantum jumps are going to happen during quantum computing processes. And it's the quantum jumps that create errors or that are the errors. And so if you have a way to know that they're going to happen and then reverse them, you can reduce the error rate in quantum computing, which will make them more accurate and more efficient. Better quantum computers.
As long as they're encased in aluminum and being heavily I mean,
it's still a little bit. It's still far off. Yeah.
I got it. The thing that this is a little unnerving. It's the suddenly the non-persistent universe. Universe is always there when you observe it. You observe it, you get a reading. You observe, it's always there. It's always there. As soon as the universe thinks you're not looking, no photons. There's nothing. There's nothing there. And then, you're looking. Oh yeah. Oh no, there's an atom. Sure, it's right here. It's been here all along. No, I know. There was nothing. A second ago, there's nothing. Now you put an atom there. It's a completely non-persistent universe. That's frightening.
It is, but it's also where there was no predictability from the Schrödinger thought experiment previously. Now we have predictability. Now we know some aspect of what these qubits are going to do. And so we have taken the next step in this the understanding of that quantum realm. And we are making it more tangible than it has been in the past, which is exciting. It's great.
So I like deep questions with little information or little ability to process the information. Is this forcing a deterministic universe out of this, or is this just is it because of the way the experiment is designed it's creating a deterministic outcome, or is there just a deterministic backbone to this? And that's the question we would need to ask one of these people who's working.
Yes, we would have to ask someone who's an expert in quantum mechanics. Absolutely, because I don't know the answer to that question. I cannot answer that question. Yes. Justin, do you have a story for us?
Oh, I do.
Yay.
Boy, do I. I've got one right over here. So this is sort of an interesting story. Which is, of course, if it wasn't, I wouldn't have brought it. Researchers at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, University Medical School, examined genes in a giant virus that are interesting because these genes that they found appear pretty much everywhere in the biological kingdoms. This is published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Researchers searched more than 8,000 virus genomes and found that many of their newly discovered giant viruses, which we've been talking about for a few years now. In one particular case, I believe they were generating DNA, which was something thought to be unheard of.
Right. That was a big story last year, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Yep.
This time they found a giant virus with multiple genes for a type of enzyme, cytochrome P450. These enzymes are common in animals, plants, bacteria. Finding them in a virus was totally unexpected and actually thought not to be possible until giant viruses, which had enough DNA to encompass something like genes of these lengths. This is Cody Voice, John Stegeman, senior author of the paper and director of the Woods Hole Center for Oceans and Human Health. This is an extremely interesting finding. Oh, he agrees. He also thinks it's interesting. Cool. In animals, P450 enzymes metabolize drugs, make steroid hormones, defend against pollutants. We have yet to find out what they are doing in these viruses, but for sure they are unique, unlike P450s in other organisms and any other organism. So the P450 enzymes are one of the largest enzyme superfamilies that are known. And so they're looking at it from a health perspective and trying to determine ways to prevent pneumonias. I think giant viruses are linked to pneumonia. So they're looking, maybe this is a thing that we can exploit to reduce our weakness to pneumonia, or maybe find a cure kind of a thing for people who are walking around with pneumonia, these sorts of things, drug targeting, that sort of. But I think the more fascinating thing is what are they doing there? Is this some sort of horizontal gene transfer that this gene found its way into this, or is this something that these giant viruses, and also they're finding these are in the oceans, these are deep sea, they're finding these giant viruses. Is this something that giant viruses have always have this gene rolling around in different forms, maybe having the ability to produce enzymes? And what are these enzymes? What work are they doing? And is the horizontal gene transfer, or is the evolution an adaptation of this gene to do other functions, something that came after viruses had already created it?
Right.
It starts to get us into that question of what came first. Is the virus the original life form on the planet?
Yeah, I think the whole thing I think about viruses is that they're none of the fluff, right? They're just like the bare bones information that you need. Not even the information that you need to duplicate yourself, because you're outsourcing that. So any of this kind of extra stuff that we're finding, it either has some really beneficial function or it's in there by accident. I gotta think. Was accidentally grabbed as they were running out the door.
Could just be that.
Yeah. There you go.
There you go. Running out the door. A quick highlight. I have been texting our guest. Apparently, messages have not been going where they're supposed to. I've recently sent the Hangout link, and we will see if Dr. Stanley is able to join us. I have, we'll see. But as he joins the show, maybe I do believe it is time now for this wonderful part of the show that we love called Blair's Animal. Whoop, wait, should we do? Hello, Dr. Stanley.
Hey, Dr. Kiki.
Hello. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened with the Hangout links.
The internet is a mysterious place.
It is. I think there was a black hole somewhere. Sucked the emails away. I know it's late where you are. We were just about to start Blair's Animal Corner. Blair, are you cool with doing your corner after?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Okay, so we will run forward. For the podcast, I get to edit. Yeah. Okay, let me make sure I've got everything here. Okay. And now I would love to introduce our guest for the evening. We are joined by Dr. Matthew Stanley. He's a professor at NYU Gallatin School of Individualized Study. He teaches and researches the history and philosophy of science. He holds degrees in astronomy, religion, physics, the history of science, and is interested in the connections between science and the wider culture. He is the author of the recently published book, Einstein's War, How Relativity Triumphed Amid the Vicious Nationalism of World War I. And he also is one of the hosts of the What the If podcast. So podcast host to podcast host. And as a fan of your work, thank you for joining us tonight on the show, Dr. Stanley.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Honestly, astronomy, physics, religion, history, philosophy, science, you have so many interests and degrees, and they're kind of all over the place, disparate things. How did you take them and go, this is what I'm going to do with my life, and this is what I'm going to study? What's your path? How'd you get here?
That's a good question. So I started off being interested in physics. I wanted to be an engineer. I used to build lasers. And then I took a history class by accident that was cross-listed in the religion department back at my alma mater of the University of Rochester. And I found that the humanities were pretty cool, that they had some interesting stuff going on that I had not thought about before. But I still wanted to work in physics and be an engineer. So I was just doing history and philosophy and religion on the side for fun. But gradually, I found that the humanities corrupted my thinking, and I started asking questions in my science classes and in the lab that didn't quite register as scientific questions for the people I was working with, but I was still interested in. So things like, where did this equation come from? Why choose this kind of derivation and not another? Where did somebody get this idea from in the first place? And I discovered through some trial and error that there was such a field as history of science where I could ask those sorts of questions. So in retrospect, like, my CV makes total sense. Everything kind of builds together. And the book you just held up is the Venn diagram of all of my interests. But at the time, I had no idea what I was doing.
I love that. I mean, so often when you're moving forward through life, it's not a clear path. But then when you look back, you go, "Oh, this all makes sense." So I love the questions that you're asking. I mean, when we talk about science on the show, so often it's, here's a science story for you. It's a result, or there is a paper that's published, and we don't know much about the stories behind it, like where it came from. Do you see the history of science as something that kind of goes around in the background of all of this modern media and how we talk about science? Do you feel like it's gaining ground? Do you feel like it's losing ground? Where do you think it sits?
Well, that's a good question. There's an important sense in which the history of science gets deleted from the stories people usually tell about science, right? Because as you say, we're interested in the results. We want to know what the new thing is. And the people who do that work want to make the story seem as straightforward and convincing as possible. And often that means you delete all of the mistakes you made, the wrong turns, the screw ups. But I think those are actually the interesting parts of the story, right? It's because if it's just this story of somebody has a cool idea and they test it and they're right, all right, I guess that's kind of interesting. But I'd much rather hear about the person who starts off with a completely wrong idea and battles their way through all of the difficulties and finally gets to something cool at the end.
But Einstein, he didn't start with a wrong idea.
Well, this is the question, right? So a big chunk of my book is Einstein screwing up. And I think that's one of the things I enjoy most about the story, is we have this terrific documentary record of Einstein creating general relativity. So we have his notebooks and we have his letters to his friends. So we can see the places where he screws up. So, sometimes there's a page in his notebook where he just X's out the whole thing. Right? He just had a bad day and he's like, oh, exactly. Right? That's just a total mess. And at one point he makes an enormous mistake that he doesn't realize for about 3 years. And then he has to go back and redo everything. Right. And then when people ask him years later, how did you create the theory of relativity? He doesn't tell them that part. Right? he has a totally different story. So I love that I was able to go back and recover all the messiness from which it actually came.
Well, and that's why in school they tell you there's no pencils in lab notebooks and things like that. Yes. No scribbling out just a single line through your mistake. That's so we can learn from them ultimately, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's actually what Einstein does in 1915 when he realizes he's made a mistake. He goes back to the stuff he wrote in 1912 and he's able to go through line by line. And he says, oh, this is the screw up.
Yeah. Wow.
That is impressive. I mean, seriously, that is testament to keeping good notes, writing everything down, which they tell you to do in science. Yeah.
A sense of who, for lack of a better phraseology, who Einstein was reading at the time. Because it seemed the way his story's told too, it's him alone, isolated from the world, developing all of this, but he must have been feeding off of other things and other people that were contemporaries.
Yeah, and I think this is also a really important part of the story. There's a sense in which I think this book is the story of Einstein and his posse, right? It's him and his friends, and his friends are the ones who give him ideas, tell him when he's screwing up. They do things he can't do in very literal ways often. So, for instance, he goes. So Einstein's working on general relativity in the middle of World War I. Right. So he's blockaded in Berlin. So he can't contact many of the people he needs to about this. One of the few groups he can talk to are his friends in the Netherlands, because the Netherlands are neutral. So as often as he can, he takes a train over to the Netherlands and he has to, get harassed by the German border guards and things as he's going through. And he sits down with folks like Paul Ehrenfest and Wilhelm de Sitter and Hendrik Lorentz to talk about relativity, because he knows he can't just do it all in his own head. And the people in Berlin don't understand the theory. So he has to go bounce ideas off of people. And then after each trip he makes, there's this flurry of correspondence back and forth as they try to make sense of the things he was talking about, and he tries to make sense of the things they said. And it's this really dynamic thing. So he gets he makes big leaps forward every time he's able to find sort of a kindred spirit to talk to. So, for instance, he does this with David Hilbert when he goes to visit Göttingen. And Hilbert's not just a kindred mathematical spirit, but he's a kindred political and social spirit too. That is, he's another kind of socialist liberal who Einstein is happy to be himself with. And that turns out to really matter, right? Einstein has a hard time hanging out with the right-wing scientists.
Yeah, so a big part of the story is the rise of nationalism, the politics that are going on in the day and age, the rise of the beginning of World War I, and how all of these things affect the science that is able to take place. How did things change, the relationships between the scientists and also the way that they could do their science from before the war to during the war to after?
Well, right before World War I breaks out, so the early years of the 20th century, science is this intensely globalized, intensely international project. So everyone is working across borders. It's not just sort of expeditions to different places, but things that we take for granted, simply circulation of journals from place to place. This is an era long before email, of course, or even telephones. So a lot of the work gets done by personal letters, right? Einstein has a cool idea, so he writes to his friend in Finland, about this idea, and his friend writes back a couple of weeks later. So the work is intensely internationalist until August 1914. And then very suddenly, after the war breaks out, all the scientists retreat into their nationalist camps. So England, and I can't sort of overemphasize how crazy this was. So English scientists refused to send their journals to German scientists. German scientists refused to cite any English papers. They set up special conferences so they don't have to use the language of their enemy. It's the magnitude of the nationalism, sort of this knee-jerk intense hatred, is really dramatic. So science goes overnight from being an intensely globalized international project to being an intensely nationalized one.
How did that affect, I mean, this is a big part of the story, the work of someone like Einstein, who is relying on his international colleagues? Part of one of his tests of relativity it relied on an astronomical imaging of a solar eclipse. And this is something that he couldn't do from where he was, and he had to rely on other people doing it and getting that information sent to him. And so, yay, it happened before the war took place, but then stuff like that just stopped. Like, what was the impact?
Yeah, so Einstein actually gets this particular test you mentioned. One of the predictions of the general theory of relativity is the idea that light is bent as it goes by the sun, by the sun's gravity. And you observe this at a solar eclipse by looking to see if stars are displaced slightly from where they're supposed to be. So Einstein had spent years trying to set up this experiment. And get somebody to go do it. And he actually manages to get the experiment set up. He's not doing it himself because Einstein's not good at the hands-on kind of stuff. But he gets friends sent to observe an eclipse in August of 1914 in Russia. So this is perfect. This is supposed to test Einstein's idea. Unfortunately, the eclipse is scheduled for a couple of days after the war breaks out. So once the war breaks out, the Russians say, well, we've got this bunch of Germans here with fancy optical equipment right near one of our naval bases. They say they're doing an astronomical experiment, but I'll bet they're just spies. So the group of Germans that's supposed to test Einstein's theory get arrested and impounded. And amazingly, they actually survived the experience. But Einstein, the first thing we have that Einstein writes down in reaction to the outbreak of the war has nothing to do with actual slaughter of people and invasions. It's him being upset that his experiment got ruined.
Oh, drat.
Yeah. That's about it. So, and then of course, during the war, he isn't even getting enough food in Berlin, much less the possibility of conducting an experiment elsewhere. So he has to rely on people who he's never met in the end to conduct the observation in 1919.
And he, meanwhile, at one point in his movement, different places, he was, I guess, categorized as a Jew because he came from Jewish heritage. His family was Jewish, but he was atheist. But they wouldn't allow him in Austria to say he was atheist. He had to pick a religion.
Yeah, that's the story as Einstein would tell it, is he grew up in a family of secular Jews, no interest in what we would think of as Jewish practice, and didn't identify that way until he got a job in the Austro-Hungarian Empire in Prague. And there was a form he had to fill out. And on that form, you had to declare your creed, your religious belief. And he tried to put in none, and they said no. And so eventually he said, "Okay, I'm
leave it blank."
So he liked to say that the Austrian Empire made him a Jew.
And did that affect him personally in terms of, fear for his life?
Well, not during the war. I should say after it's after he becomes famous that becomes an issue. So right after the end of the war, Germany is in total chaos, and there's a huge rise in anti-Semitism. So the right wing, the people who would eventually become the Nazis, try to blame the Jews for the loss of the war. And Einstein is suddenly famous, so he becomes an easy target for this right wing. So there's actually an organized relativity movement in 1920 and 1921 to make the case that relativity was Jewish science. And Einstein, again, he's so cheeky. Einstein actually goes to one of the anti-Einstein rallies in Berlin just to see what they're saying about him. And he describes in detail all these anti-Semites getting together to attack his science.
That's fantastic. And he started doing, but he started also publicly speaking out against this rise of the right. I mean, he was not hiding in any way. I mean, he was getting warnings, wasn't he? You need to tone it down. You're being too much of a public figure.
Yeah, this was a problem for Einstein both during and after the war, that he was outspoken politically. So during the war, he's a pacifist and a socialist, and he speaks out against the war and nationalism, which is a really bad thing to do in Imperial Germany. So eventually he actually gets his travel curtailed and people are reading his mail and such. He doesn't actually get arrested before the war is over. But then in the post-war era, when the anti-Einstein groups are mobilizing, he pushes back. As you say, he's not willing to take this. And that's actually how he gets interested in Zionism, is he's not interested in the Jewish homeland for any religious or scriptural reasons. He just suddenly realizes that he and people like him need a safe place to go. So he throws his weight behind the Zionist movement just so literally people who share names with him can find someplace safe.
When we look back at history, there's often the interpretation of the historian looking at these letters and putting everything together. What is your process in going back through the writings and the works to be able to create this kind of a story of the life and time of the creation of one of the most important theories in physics?
Yeah, so there's two kind of broad categories I try to work with. So one is what historians call context, right? So it's what Justin was just asking about. Who is Einstein reading? Who are the other people working on this? Because we, particularly scientists, like to, pull an equation out of its context. So for instance, there's a reason we call the equations in special relativity the Lorentz transformations. It's because Einstein was not the first one to write them down, right? His friend Lorentz was.
Yep.
So that's really important to think about, that scientific ideas don't emerge out of nothingness, but they emerge out of vigorous conversations among different sorts of people. So there's scientific context, and there's wider context, things like the war as well. So the first thing I try to do is get a sense of what you might call the times, right? What are the events going on? What is Einstein living through? What are his friends interested in? What are they talking about? What are they worried about? And then the second is more of a personal focus, which is I need to get a sense of the people themselves. So in this story, that's Einstein and Eddington, and understanding why they make the choices they do. What do they care about? What are they willing to put themselves on the line for? And as usually for this era, at least, that's documents that we have. So there's been a heroic effort to collect essentially everything Einstein wrote over the course of his life. So it's the collected papers of Albert Einstein, which are online, should you ever want to go browse through them. So I just sat through and read them all, kind of from start to finish. So I got to know, what he worried about day to day. And it was great to see that sometimes he's really concerned about these detailed scientific problems. Sometimes he has just forgotten his keys and he's writing to his wife to say, can you let me in, when I get home from this trip. He loses his keys a lot.
That's something. Reading through your book, you're like, and he lost his keys again. Making comments through the book about his clothes, and we all know he had that reputation for just kind of being unkempt looking a lot of the time. But he does have that, from the way you portray him, just the I guess absent-minded professor aspect of he's so into what he's doing.
That stereotype, right?
Yeah.
But then you also get him climbing across the revolutionary barricades in November 1918 in Berlin, and facing down gun-wielding people. in order to literally, rescue professors at the University of Berlin. And I love that both those things are true, right? He can't remember his keys, but he fearlessly walks through a barricade. And that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I think this book, in the very beginning, you comment on how women loved the way he looked, and he was a magnet for the girls, and so you get this idea of Einstein as a young man, like a vibrant, curious, well-spoken, kind of he was not artistic, but because of his sensibilities and the time and the place, I could imagine having hung out with him at a cafe, right?
Exactly.
Having
Yep.
having a conversation, right?
Mhm.
And but then you also see his growth through his career and how he became a real, I don't know, he grew as an adult, but it's just, I love this realization of the scientist as a human person.
Mhm.
Instead of, okay, man wearing white lab coat
Yeah.
Exactly.
in a laboratory.
With crazy white hair. Yeah.
Yeah. We know him as someone who was really into math, didn't do well in math in school. That's the story
I
everyone
thought that was
tells.
a rumor, though. I thought that was just a thing that kids who were they told kids who were bad at math.
Yeah, he does. I should say he does fine in
Yeah.
math. But he himself complains about his mathematical ability sometimes. So I think that has gotten legs.
And I love how it gets into, there were mathematicians who took his early ideas and turned them into math, and he
Mhm.
was turned off by it. He said,
Horrified.
I mean, I just want to do the physics, and now they've taken it and described it in math, and now I have to do the math too?
Exactly.
You've made this harder for me.
Mhm.
It's hard to imagine him as someone who would be upset with that, but it's an
Well,
interesting
that's right. And
concept.
this is, I think, the early Einstein and the late Einstein. And the book is, as you say, the kind of this transition period.
Yeah.
But the early Einstein is all about concrete ideas and visualizable things and what can you feel and see. And he's deeply suspicious of philosophy and mathematics. And then by the end of the story, he's this crazed Platonist who thinks mathematics can reveal all the truths of the universe, and is sometimes, suspicious of experiments. And this is one of the reasons I like this period in his life, is he has this kind of conversion experience, in which suddenly he accepts that, well, maybe we can know the truths of the universe
Through math.
through math. Yeah.
Not through our own eyes. We
Mhm.
can't trust our eyes.
Yeah.
What's one of your favorite stories about Einstein?
One of my favorite stories from the book. So this is the great transition period for Einstein, when he goes from being obscure academic to the most famous person in the world. And I love all the anecdotes of the pre-fame years of Einstein. So for instance, it's 1918. So this is 3 years after he finishes the theory of general relativity, his magnum opus. And he goes to Switzerland to give a series of lectures on relativity. And they cancel the lectures because nobody's interested. Right. There are not 12 people in the country of Switzerland interested in hearing Einstein talk about relativity.
Now that's laughable. But
Exactly, right. And even
Yeah.
a year after that, it would have been laughable. But at the time, they're just like, don't bother coming, Albert. There's, we literally, it would cost us too much money to heat the lecture hall
Wow.
if you come. So we're just going to cancel it.
I bet those people felt stupid later.
Yeah, we
Oh, man.
missed a slight opportunity there, right?
All those people that were offered a chance to listen to Einstein, they were like, nah.
Yeah. But what interesting thing could this guy have to say?
Yeah.
We like to think about mentors now. It's very important for people coming into careers to have mentors. Can you talk a bit about the relationship that Einstein had with his mentor, and then
Yeah.
whether or not he became mentor as he moved
That's a
forward?
really good question. And I think it's the role of mentors and mentees is super important in Einstein's life. So his first sort of intellectual mentor is Ernst Mach, sort of this physicist and philosopher, and he's the one who teaches Einstein originally to not think about mathematics and philosophy and just focus on the concrete things. And it's this kind of Machian approach that gives rise to special relativity in the first place. And then Einstein has his miracle year in 1905. I should say Einstein has trouble with mentors early on because he hates authority figures. So all the people who he should have been like sucking up to get good letters of recommendation, he's just pisses off when he's in college. So that's why he has to take the job at the patent office, is because no one will write him a letter of recommendation. 1905 comes, he has his miracle year, and some people are impressed. And most importantly is Max Planck, who's the great leader of European physics at the time. And Planck is the editor at the Annalen der Physik, so he's the one who decides to publish Einstein's original papers. And most people can't make heads or tails of relativity early on. It's not at all clear why it's interesting or important. But Planck is the one who says there's something really important here. So he eventually gets Einstein the job in Berlin and kind of pulls him from obscurity. And even once Einstein is in Berlin, everybody's kind of looking around and saying, what is this guy here for? And if it wasn't for Planck, nobody would have paid any attention to this. Yeah. Planck keeps saying, you've got to listen to what this guy has to say. You've got to pay attention. And Einstein is deeply grateful for this. Another one of his mentors at the time is Hendrik Lorentz, his Dutch friend, who has this kind of fatherly relationship. And we have these great stories of the two of them meeting, and like Lorentz would set up interesting problems for Einstein to solve, and then like gather people around so they could all watch him solve the problem. The kind
public
of
challenges.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like set him up for Jeopardy or something.
Yeah.
And then the flip side of that is once Einstein becomes famous, he does what he can to help out, I think, particularly marginalized people. That is, once he starts feeling marginalized as a Jew himself, he feels the need to help out people who are having trouble fitting in, as it were. So one of the classic examples here is Emmy Noether of Noether's theorem. So she's teaching at Göttingen, but without pay for years and years, because that's forbidden. That women can't actually take the habilitation shrift and become professors. So Einstein starts writing letters, and he's like, this is ridiculous. She's the best mathematician I have ever met. Right? We have to fix this, right? And his ability and his willingness to help out junior scholars and marginalized scholars turns out to actually be kind of life or death after the Nazis come to power in 1933, because suddenly, so Einstein has to flee the Nazis and he ends up in New Jersey, of all places, right? But he's in America, and he knows there are all of these, nowadays we would say at-risk scholars in Europe who need to get out there. And he dedicates years of his life to finding them jobs and getting them visas, getting them into countries where they will be safe from the Nazis. So mentorship for many years there is not just a matter of kind of intellectual work, but literally life or death.
We know that history has a tendency to repeat itself if we don't learn from it. And right now we are in a time that is ripe with populist ideals and a bit of nationalism thrown in there. How do you see when you look at the scientific landscape of today versus the early part of the 19th century? Do you see any parallels? Do you see any lessons that we could take with us?
Well, I think there are definitely some worrying signs these days. So for instance, the NSF these days is checking to see whether American scientists have unacceptably close ties to Chinese and Iranian scholars, right? So a couple of scientists at Emory lost their positions just last week, I think, over undisclosed Chinese ties, right? And these are not specific concerns. It's not like they're being accused of espionage on some specific point, but rather there's this sense that it's not okay for American scientists to be working closely with scientists who are seen to be in competing nations. And that's, of course, much gentler than what happened at the beginning of World War I, but it's the same problem, right? There's this sense that it's not acceptable to work with scientists across borders. And there's often a hope that there's something about science that will just fix this problem automatically, right? Science is automatically international and rises above questions of nationalism. But I think, as you say, history shows us that that's not the case. There's plenty of scientists who say science should be nationalistic and should be closely tied to military or political concerns. And it takes people like Einstein and Eddington who consciously say, no, that's not what science is supposed to be like. And they have to do their science differently. And they have to make connections with different sorts of people and put themselves out on the line. So if we want to push back against the kind of creeping scientific nationalism we see today, the only solution is for scientists to step up and do their science differently, to push back against that and say that's not how they think it should work.
Great. Do you think the internet is good for our continued scientific communications, or do you think do you see how do you see that?
Yeah, well, I should say Einstein would have been very happy to have the web, as it were. That would have solved a lot of his problems at the day. But even in 1914, they had what they thought of as instantaneous communication, which was the telegraph network. So there was actually kind of a proto-scientific internet done over telegraph lines at the start of the war. So observations could get sent around quickly and such. But the center of that was in Kiel, which is in Germany. So as soon as the war began, the British Navy cuts the telegraph lines, and all of a sudden this worldwide network was gone. Right? So I think the lesson there is that we should not be complacent about our connectivity. Right? It could be removed quite quickly because it's just as easy to cut a fiber optic cable today as it was a telegraph cable then. Maybe satellites will save us. I don't know.
Yeah, and the idea too of people reading Einstein's letters to monitor communications, it's really much easier done now. In fact, it's archived. You don't even have to send somebody there on the right day to intercept, and so it's a whole. But so this is. I was going to say it would be a sort of canary coal mine sort of situation to see collaborations between scientists across borders being shut down as a prelude to more. But you're explaining this is already something that we are now facing and that is now taking place.
Yes, I think that's right. We're a few steps along.
It's something that I think not a lot of people are aware of. So this is an important thing. So what are you doing moving forward?
Oh, to help with these problems?
Yeah. Are you, or are you? I mean, you're working on your books.
I mean, that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, right? Is to try to put out some of these historical lessons that I think we've forgotten over the last 100 years. And as a teacher, right, you have to kind of hope that the work you do in the classroom every day will come to fruition down the line, right? Because I'm not a climb over the barricades kind of guy. And I'm glad there are people like that out there who do that work. And I hope I can support them with ideas and stories, right? Stories are really important.
They're how the stories we tell define us for sure. And your podcast is full of stories So I've gotten to be a guest on your podcast and it was so enjoyable, but I would love it if you would tell our audience about the What the If podcast.
Yeah, so I should say it was a pleasure having you on. This is one of our first guests, actually, as I recall. So on What the If, my friend Philip Shane and I, we get together and we change something about the universe. So it might be, what if there was no gravity? What if water froze at a different temperature? In your case, it was what if people were birds?
Yeah. I got to pick a kind of bird and it was like, we're all shrikes now.
and then we run with whatever that thing is. And it turns out to be, we end up in some absurd place. Like, as I recall, with the shrikes, we had a whole shrike society of recorded bird songs and enemies being impaled on trees and things.
Yeah.
And then along the way, the thing is that doing that thought experiment, really thinking through the consequences of changing some little thing, means you need to think through the science really deeply and figure out the connections between things that you might not otherwise see. So it's a game, right? Philip likes to call it a game show, because it is a game, right? We're just kind of having fun. But in the process of figuring out the rules of the game, we learn something about those rules, right? And hopefully we understand the science a little bit better at the end of the day and have some fun while we're doing it.
Yeah, and there was a TV show years ago called Connections that did this wonderful job of taking you through a scientific idea, the thread that carried it from one modality to another. But in this case, you learn the connections by that one shift. What are the dominoes that fall? What are the things that are affected? And I kept having to be reminded over and over again, oh my gosh, we're birds. Okay, how do I think like this bird? If I were a shrike, what would I do right now?
That is exactly it, right? Or if I was not restrained by gravity right now, how would that change the sort of choices I would make?
I would tie myself down.
Well,
what's down?
What's down, exactly, right?
If I'm on the planet and I want to stay on the planet, then I'm going to have something to attach me to the earth. I want to stay down here.
But why?
I don't know. Yes. Okay. So we're starting to play the game right now.
Right,
Here we go. Oh my goodness. You know what would be super fun? We should find a way to do a This Week in Science What the If crossover.
Yes.
Hero team up.
Yeah. We could do a hero. We could team up and that could be, I will be in touch with you both about this idea.
Okay, that would be great. Yeah, because we often get our ideas from science stories of the week, right?
Yeah.
So if you find something juicy.
Right. I don't know. I'm imagining pulling stories out of a bowl. This is what happens now.
Well,
let's roll with it. Could be fun. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell us about your book or your work and what you're doing right now?
Well, it's kind of what we were saying a minute ago. It's an appeal for the importance of stories in science, right? To remember that a scientific discovery or an equation or experiment isn't a singular thing, but it's the result of real human people interested in real things, talking to other people, and that they screw up and they make mistakes, but because they care about things and they push forward, we get stuff done. I really want science to be kind of a messy thing, actually. I want people to understand all of the it's a warts and all approach to science, because I feel a lot of my experiences with a lot of my students is they're told early on, third grade or something, that science is all about rationality, and if they don't get the right answer, they've done something wrong, and it doesn't feel connected to their life at all. So I'm trying to tell stories about how science is connected to our lives, and it's, even if you're a poet or a dancer or a politician, there are interesting things in science for you that you should care about.
If you're a politician, especially, I would recommend you start paying attention to what is available in the knowledge banks of science.
Yeah, that would be
Really
nice.
helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exchange of face.
Let's vote for more science-oriented politicians.
Mhm.
Matthew Stanley, author of Einstein's War, How Relativity Triumphed Amid the Vicious Nationalism of World War I. It is available now if you are interested in the book. Thank you for joining us on TWIS tonight. It has
Thanks so
just
much
been,
for having me. It was great.
yeah, it's been really great talking with you. This is so fun.
Great. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, me too. We'll be in touch. Thank
Cool.
you.
Take care.
Thanks.
Good night. All right, everyone, we are going to take a break right now. And when we come back, we will have, as a follow-on to the end of Dr. Stanley's interview, what has science done for you lately? And we have Blair's Animal Corner coming up. We have the science yet to come. Stay tuned for more This Week in Science.
Can't explain things you've heard more than intuition. A lot of research shows the way to go. New conclusion. The methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need. Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for the things I couldn't see. The answers lie.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of This Week in Science. We do appreciate you joining us for this time in your life. You're taking your precious time and you're sharing it with us, and we hope that you're learning interesting things, because we are. I mean, that's why we do this. It's so much fun. Science needs to be shared. We need to be talking about it and understanding how it applies to our lives. Let's share more of it. You can help us share TWIS by telling people to go to twis.org and to subscribe to our podcast, or to subscribe to our YouTube page, where they can also find videos of This Week in Science. We are available also on iTunes, Google Play. We make it easy with a nice orange subscribe button for the big three there, but we are available other places: Spotify, Pandora, Spreaker, TuneIn, radio.com. Some of the big places out there you will find This Week in Science. We are out there. Just like the truth is out there from the X-Files. No, TWIS is out there. This Week in Science also needs your support to continue going and to continue growing. And so if you would like to help support This Week in Science, one thing you can do is, if you go to that TWIS page, twis.org, click on our Zazzle store. The Zazzle store takes you to a wonderful warehouse of TWIS goodies. We've got all sorts of items with the TWIS logos that'll help you proclaim your love of This Week in Science, but also will keep you clothed and keep you entertained. There are some lovely images from past Blair's Animal Corner catalog calendars in there as well. Back at twis.org, you can also click on our Patreon link. That'll take you to our Patreon community, patreon.com/thisweekinscience, where you can become a patron. As a patron, any level you choose to support us at, you will be charged once per month. But that level, it does come with some perks. Anything $10 and over, you will be thanked by name at the end of the show. If you've ever listened to that roll of names at the end of the show, those are all people who are supporting us on Patreon, and you can be one of those people too. $10 a month, like that's a cup of coffee a week, which I'm sure you drink more coffee than that. But, you know, our podcast, are we worth a cup of coffee? Sure we are. Click on one of those select buttons and become a patron of This Week in Science. Twis.org, it's where you find all the things. And sign up for our newsletter. If you haven't been, there's a little pop-up window that might allow you to sign up for our newsletter. Oh, thank you for your support, everything that you do. We appreciate it. And we really could not do what we do without you.
Can't explain things things you've heard with more than intuition. A lot of research shows the way to go. New conclusion. The methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need. Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for the things I couldn't see.
And we're back to This Week in Science. Kiki, what's up next?
Oh, I think it is time for This Weekend. What has science done for me Yeah. Everyone, this week we have been blessed by a letter from one of our Facebook followers. And the letter is this. Hi, guys. My name is Johnny Blindman Hampson. I am blind. And I just love your show for sure. It makes me look good in front of people for sure and gives me lots of toys to play with. If you want to see If you want to see much more of me, just look for me on YouTube. Just search for Blind Man Cyber Cave Show and Johnny Plays the Keys. Thank you guys. Hope this gets on your show. I only have one person watching me so far. We'll see you or hear you later from Johnny Blind Man and his computer. Lacia, love you. This is from Lacia in brackets, done by voice only. Very cool what I can do thanks to science. So this whole note was written by voice through a computer interface. Johnny is blind and he has also sent us a voice message, which I'm going to play right now. Oh, why is it so quiet?
I can't hear it.
Oh, it's quiet. I don't know why. Hold on. Let's see if it was louder earlier. I don't know why it's so quiet. Oh, bummer. I don't know how to fix that. My volume's all the way up. Oh, I know why it's quiet because I'm a silly mouse.
Button.
Hold on. I'm going to let this play all the way out and then I'll play it for you again. My volume was turned down on my mixer.
Ha!
It's over.
From the
again.
music. That's why.
I turned it down from the music. That's where it went. Okay, we're going to start this over.
I'd like to take a quick moment to speak on behalf.
Wait, nope.
Hi.
Hold on. Too
Wait.
many things going on.
Is
I
that
heard
me?
you.
Yeah, that was
you.
Justin.
What am I talking about?
It was Justin. It was from a past episode of TWIS in my iTunes. And I don't know how to make this thing. So we're just going to go with roll that Kiki's going to be editing this week.
Yeah.
Woo! This is the Editful
Edit
show. Dun, dun, dun. Hey, YouTubers, you see the real life of the TWIS podcast right here. Warts and all, just like
Every episode
science.
is like this. We just pretend at the end.
I know. Okay, here we go. Now I would love to play for you a voicemail from Johnny.
Yo, guys, I just wanted to let you know that it's not a bot here. It's just Johnny Blindman just giving you a voice message to make sure that keep those bad computers away. Johnny Blindman, we're out of here. Thanks a lot for watching my videos, and hope get a lot of people on. Check you later. Love your show, man. Just love everything about it. Check y'all.
Nice.
Johnny, thank you so much for listening to TWIS and for being a part of our audience and for writing in to let us know what science has done for you lately, which is obviously do cool things with computers. I love the fact that you're not held back. You're able to do what you want to do because of technology. It's all of it. If anyone out there, it is. It's great. I mean, so much that technology allows people to do these days. I love it. Toys to play with, as Johnny said. So if you want to find him, just like he said, Johnny Blind Man's Cyber Cave Show, or Johnny Plays the Keys. He's got some music. He plays piano for sure. Anyone out there who wants to write in with a what has science done for you lately? I need some more, everyone. I need them. Send them to me, the letters of what science has done for you. I need them now. Don't be scared that whatever you write won't be enough. It's always enough if you're sending something. Come on, you're sharing. It's great. We need you to do that. Share with me, share with us. Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com or send a message to our Facebook page, facebook.com/thisweekinscience. We've got to keep this segment of the show going. And now, do you know what time it is?
Is it finally time?
Oh, yeah, we're just going to talk about science now. No, it's time for Blair's Animal Corner.
Oh, with Blair.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. If you want to hear about animals, she's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. Then I'm
What you got, Blair?
Oh my goodness, I have an amazing story about mole rats. Mole rats, we already know they're immune to cancer, and you can spill acid on them.
Why would you
And
do that?
they don't, well, they're not technically immune to cancer. They don't grow tumors. They have a resistance to tumors. So, the popular media would often say, like, oh, mole rats are immune to cancer. It's all splitting hairs, but basically they're amazing and they're really good at survival and they avoid a lot of the worst parts of life, which is very interesting. So if we can figure out how they do that, that would be very advantageous to us potentially. But one of the things that they are resistant to is if you splash acid on them in a very scientific and methodological fashion, they don't seem to mind, which ultimately comes down to pain receptors. Mole rats are insensitive to many kinds of pain, and this bit of research coming out this week from the Max Delbruck Center for Molecular Medicine is looking at specifically how they avoid the sensation of pain from different stimuli. So about 10 years ago, the Max Delbruck Center of Molecular Medicine became famous. This was about 2008 because they found that mole rats felt no pain when exposed to acid or capsaicin, which is a substance in chili peppers that gives them their spice. So if you've ever accidentally chopped a jalapeno and then touched your eye, I've done that. That is because of capsaicin, that terrible, burning, painful sensation. So in the experiments in 2008, they found that in general, these mole rats showed an amazing resistance to pain. Specifically, it was the naked mole rat in this 2008 study. They didn't seem to mind the acid or the capsaicin. So in this new study, they went to South Africa and Tanzania to look at pain sensitivity a little more broadly. They wanted to see what was happening specifically, why they were immune to certain pain, what specific types of pain, and if it's something that could be extrapolated to humans. So they looked at naked mole rats and 8 other related species, a lot of mole rats. A lot of people don't know. There are many types of mole rats, not just the naked ones. So they looked at 9 species, all looking at their response to 3 substances that usually cause quite a bit of pain in humans and other mammals. Those substances were diluted hydrochloric acid, definitely ouch, capsaicin, ouch, and allyl isothiocyanate, AITC. AITC is what gives wasabi its hot taste. So kind of another side of the coin in relation to capsaicin. The mole rats are naturally exposed to these substances or something very similar in the wild from a bunch of things. One of the big ones is the food that they eat. They live near and eat roots that have some of these kind of spicy elements to them, which is supposed to keep other animals from eating them. But also there was one type of mole rat, which I'll get to in a second, that lives alongside ants that have a very painful bite. So knowing that, they looked at these 9 different species, and they found that 3 mole rat species were insensitive to acid. Those 3 were not closely related through evolution, so this is most likely a convergent trait. 2 of those 3 species did not show evidence of pain from capsaicin. And the third, so when they injected the capsaicin into their paw, they just kind of lifted their paw, they licked at it, which is a general demonstration of pain. And so there was a response to the capsaicin in one of the 3, but then just one mole rat species was, as they say, impervious to AITC. That was the wasabi-like compound. It was not the naked mole rat, it was the high-veld mole rat, which is named after the region in eastern South Africa where they're found. So from there, looking further, they found what the AITC does specifically. It attacks amino acids in the body and can destroy proteins. And that's why other species avoid coming into contact with it. And that might be physiologically why there is pain involved. They took sensory tissue from the spinal cord and dorsal root ganglia of all 9 species that they looked at. In the dorsal root ganglia, there are clusters of neurons that transmit pain signals through the spinal cord. With sequencing technology, they compared around 7,000 genes inside that dorsal root ganglia, and they found that 2 genes were altered within the animals that felt no pain in the high-veld mole rats. These genes had ion channels TRPA1 and NAV17. It is known that these 2 channels are related to pain perception. AITC, the wasabi compound, and many other irritants found in roots, which again the mole rats eat, activate one of these ion channels, TRPA1. So that all is making sense so far, that would be related to the pain response from this quote unquote wasabi channel. That is the only one that was switched off in the mole rat. So they definitely zoned in on this one ion channel related to this AITC compound. When they blocked that channel by administering a drug, the mole rat was suddenly sensitive to the wasabi compound. And 1 day later, they were indifferent once again, which means that ion channel, you could use a simple pain reliever to temporarily shut that down. So that is a very interesting start. They also found that the high-veld mole rats, as I mentioned before, they share their burrows with Natal drop-tailed ants, and they have a pungent venom that when they dilute that and then inject it into the paw of a mole rat, it's using the same ion channel. When they block that ion channel once again, the animals they had a sensitivity to the venom. So they were definitely finding that both this root and these ants had to do with a pain receptor, that in these animals that live in those areas, they found the exact ion channel that was causing this. So from here, this is a lot of mumbo jumbo to say. This one particular mole rat is, like, as far as we can tell, the king of avoiding pain from otherwise very painful things, and they have figured out the exact ion channel responsible, which means that's something that we can use and potentially extrapolate further and further and further to make pain relief way better.
But could we do it by eating the roots?
That would be a very spicy root, it would appear. We'd have to block the ion channel first.
Right.
And then
We would have to evolve we would have to adapt our own blockade to the spiciness of the root. But this is how interesting. I mean, it's an ecological, it's a physiological solution to an ecological problem. The ants and the roots and the pain, and like, I want to live here, but I don't like all this pain, so we're going to just block it. And ignore it because it's not doing me any damage.
I would be very interested to see more about the mole rat family tree. And this is something that I could do. I know the information's out there. I could do my own research and figure it out. I'm very curious how old this family tree is and how old each of these species are, because it really sounds like they have, through convergent evolution, they have, the mole rats in particular keep finding a way to live where nothing else can live. So there's something going on there. So they're for some reason, their evolutionary tree, their family tree is really good at popping up mutations that allow them to live where nothing else can. Something's going on there.
Yeah, but that are different, and that are kind of these extreme these adaptations for extreme environments that when we look at them, we go, hey, that might be really nice. I'd like to not get tumors. Hey, it would be really nice to have a high pain tolerance, or to be able to manage chronic pain.
Right. Which, again, I've talked about this on the show before. Pain, there's a reason. There's an evolutionary reason that we feel pain. Fire, hot, right? Like it's teaching our body what to not do so that we don't break our body. Basically, is why pain exists. So we don't want to eliminate pain entirely, but in this case, the mole rat lives with this root and these ants. They would be in pain all day. So that becomes white noise for pain. So they have figured out, their body has, they have evolved in such a way that that specific pain goes away because it's not beneficial to them anymore. It's all the time pain. So they don't really need it. But yeah, I think it's
all the time pain
all the
versus
time
specific pain.
Yeah, which often that's the problem with chronic pain in humans, right? Something is going wrong in the body where you're getting just this low level or sometimes high level of constant pain. And your body doesn't need that, because then not only does that just suck for you personally, but it's reducing your ability to feel other pain that you actually need to feel.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Mole rats.
Yeah, pain, because it's general and not specific. So what pain is good, what pain is bad, what pain is neutral? How do we manage it? Apparently, the mole rats have branched off around the time of the porcupines, the Eurasian porcupines, from a family tree that split off separately from mice, rat, hamsters, beavers, and others.
Right. Very interesting.
Yeah, naked mole rat, more closely related to a guinea pig than to a hamster.
Yeah.
Yeah, because guinea pigs and mole rats. What's your next story?
Oh, it's about sponges. First, let me ask the audience. Did you all know that sponges are animals?
What?
So I have to start there. Not everyone knows that. They are in the kingdom Animalia. They are animals. Phylum Porifera, which is why I had my pee popping earlier. So sponges, they are these little unsuspecting filter feeders all over the planet, most places that are wet. They can filter about 10,000 liters of water a day. And new research tells us that they can actually catch DNA in the water column.
Oh, since they're filtering, that would make sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
okay.
we've talked a few times on the show before about environmental DNA and how you can just kind of scoop up a bunch of water from the ocean and you can figure out who was swimming there earlier that day.
Yeah.
But our current methods for doing that are pretty problematic for a bunch of reasons. One is that they have to filter through water manually first. So you kind of have to dredge through this huge volume of water to find a little bit of environmental DNA that's hanging out in there. Then there's also the possibility of DNA contamination. Did you accidentally put human DNA in there when you were sampling? Did your remotely operated vehicle bring in DNA from the last sampling trip? There's all sorts of things that can happen there. Preserving water samples, as a result, risks in degrading DNA. The longer you hold it, the less DNA survives. And then also bringing machines into certain regions that are ecologically of note, areas where there's animals that might get scared away or disturbed by bringing in a machine to do some sort of water filtration and DNA isolation might be problematic and might be illegal. So what this new study has found is that sponges could be doing this job for us. As they filter feed, they are filtering through water, and DNA, environmental DNA, is getting caught up in the sponge's body cavity. They are found in every aquatic habitat, including freshwater habitats, and they are not selective filter feeders. They're not moving, they're in one place, they're just letting water move through them all day. They are also pretty resilient. You can tear off a piece of sponge for sampling and they don't get stressed out. It's not like coral where they'll expel anything. They just grow it back. That's pretty much it. And so they, in this research project from University of Salford, they found that they could actually really easily isolate the sponge DNA and throw it out. There was a particular DNA primer with a short sequence that allowed them to identify the sponge DNA and isolate it so that they were just stuck with the environmental DNA, which is what they wanted. And then they used that process in tandem with metabarcoding, which sorts a jumble of DNA from tissue samples into distinguishable species-specific piles. They just sort them into different types of piles. Throughout this very short sampling process, they found 31 taxa. Most of them, as you might imagine, were fish. But they also found Weddell seals and chinstrap penguins. The sample that had the penguins in it was identified later to be offshore of a penguin breeding colony. So it proved effective in identifying what hung out there a lot. So this is a cool way that you could potentially get some environmental DNA, find out who's living in the area without bringing in a machine and reducing the amount of water filtration you need to do. The other exciting thing about this is that if you're not just looking for areas that are close to the sea floor, which is where sponges hang out, if you want to find out more about who's hanging out closer to the surface in the open ocean, there's a possibility that you could use other filter feeders like jellyfish or salps, which sieve water but are floating. You could potentially use them to look at the environmental DNA inside.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Take advantage of the species there.
Well,
Use them.
I mean, I guess the idea starts with, well, what's the best way we could collect DNA? Well, we could take a sponge and submerge it. Oh,
there
wait.
you go.
Already sponges submerged.
What if we used a sponge?
Ooh, yeah, that's
They're
brilliant.
already there.
There,
We'll just borrow a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I love it. It's kind of a simple solution to a complex problem.
It's one of those things where the second you hear it, you go, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Should have been doing that all along.
You don't always think about it. Since we're getting towards the end of the show, do you want my quick story to round out the animal corner?
It is time for our quick stories at the end of the show. So yeah, got to make your long story quick. Time for quick stories.
Yeah.
Give it to me, Blair.
Great. A new WCS, that's Wildlife Conservation Society LIDS study, looks at the role of Asian elephants in their ecosystem. I'm sure you've heard a lot about African elephants being architects, dredging out paths and pulling down trees. But in this case, Asian elephants are creating frog condominiums. Where? In their footprints.
Wait.
Yeah.
Frog condos?
Frog
from
condos.
Elephants. Oh,
Yes.
the elephant developers, they're making habitats for frogs. Okay, I love it. Let's go.
They are predator free because fish can't live in an elephant footprint. They are rain filled for they can actually stay for up to a year filled with water, and they are temporary habitat where frogs, froglets, and tadpoles and eggs can use the footprints as stepping stones. So they can stay there until they're big enough and strong enough to go to another footprint, to a pond. So this is another way that elephants are ecosystem engineers. As I mentioned, most of the research on this has been done on African elephants, but in this case, the Asian elephants have a really, really big part of the frog life cycle in Myanmar.
That's fascinating. It is interesting. We have these conversations occasionally about animals as engineers. Beavers are, of course, obviously, but large animals like elephants are too. And this is just yet another way animals in their actions affect habitat, create the ecosystem they
Yeah,
live in.
speaking of what the if all the Asian elephants were gone, there might be no more frogs in Myanmar.
No, say it isn't so. It's not
Yeah.
so yet.
Save the elephants.
Save the elephants. That's right. And the amount of I've read recently, the demand for ivory is going down, and so the number of elephants being killed for poaching of ivory is also decreasing.
Yes. We're
So
doing it.
efforts are working. Efforts are working, people.
Is it that, or is there just less elephants to poach and the price of ivory is skyrocketed?
I like my story better than your story,
yeah.
Justin.
I think they know how to test for those variables.
All right, I have a couple of quick stories. All about microbes and mice and some crazy experiments that have been done here. So, this last week, publishing in Nature magazine, it's Nature Communications. Researchers have published their study in which they gave fecal transplants to mice from children with autism. And the mice developed autistic-like symptoms.
What?
Yes. So, the researchers at Caltech, they put fecal samples from children with and without autism into the stomachs of germ-free mice. These mice had no microbiomes of their own to begin with, behaved as they did. They mated pairs of these mice with the same microbiome, so their offspring would be exposed. So you start with no microbes, you give them the with or without, and then mate them, and the offspring were the ones that were exposed. Those offspring in the autistic fecal sample group developed autistic-like symptoms in that they were less social and performed more repetitive-like motions.
So this is an interesting follow-up on the study we're talking about very recently, where they did the fecal transplants on microbiome wipeout transplants on autistic kids and saw a 50% reduction in symptoms 2 years later. So following up with that, what if you took then this and put it over there where there wasn't in it? So now we have two different looks at this in the same way, and now we're
Yeah, there are still missing links. We don't have it exactly
there's a ton
causal.
missing.
It's not causal for sure, but it's getting there. And this is corroborative evidence, as you're saying, which is very it's saying a lot in pushing ideas in one direction. So more research will definitely be to come. Researchers are going to be looking into what exactly bacteria are doing in the gut to create or possibly lead to these symptoms. The gut-brain axis is a major area of study, and along those lines, there's a recent study that is just out in Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. If you shorten it, it's PNAS. And young blood, not just microbes, but researchers discovered that the blood of young mice is enriched in certain factors that lead to synaptic connectivity between neurons. And so the blood of young versus old contains neural connectivity proteins that lead to connectivity, which is very exciting. And then again, a lot.
So hang on. So
Mm.
the older time studies that we've talked about, the rejuvenation in old mice by getting infusion of young mice blood. Now we're looking at a possible mechanism for neural connectivity, which I would assume also maybe affect a nervous system.
Yeah.
Therefore, we may have been. This might be. Whereas before we were seeing the correlation between taking out the old blood, putting in the new blood, the young mice into an old, and having them act. Now we're starting to get down to mechanisms
Yeah.
for why,
How
not
and
just
why.
oh, look what happened, but this may be the why aspect
Yep.
coming out of this study as a follow-up.
Yep. And again, along those lines, we're back to fecal transplants. My final story is from researchers who published in Nature Communications. And in their study, they housed old mice with young mice. And because the mice groom each other, is what they think, the old mice saw their gut immune system start to act younger. They also did fecal transplants themselves, and to also show that the fecal transplant from a young mouse to an older mouse could improve the performance of the older mouse's gut immune system. But you don't necessarily have to have the fecal transplant if you're a mouse because you lick other mice. And so all the bacteria are getting passed around. But there's immune system, there's microbes, there are nervous factors, we're piecing things together. And this story is just in general getting more and more interesting. Yeah. Yes.
Spot in the chat room. All this means is Jackson probably wants to drink young people's blood. Yes,
Oh.
that's right. That's all. That's
No,
oh
no
no,
drinking
no.
of the young
Young
people's
mice. The blood of young mice. That's all
mice,
this study
right.
indicates.
Still, I don't know about that.
Bring me
All
the
right.
blood of a young mouse.
Bring me their blood. Yes. We will be young. We will be young. Ha ha. All right, Justin, give us your stories for the end of the show, please.
All right, two children's teeth. These are the ones that fall out before the adult teeth show up.
Yeah.
Were discovered in a remote archaeological site in northeastern Siberia, and they're revealing a previously unknown group of people that inhabited the region. International team of scientists led by Professor Eska Villerslew, who holds a position at St. John's College, University of Cambridge, director of the Lundbeck Foundation Center for Geogenetics at the University of Copenhagen, have named the new group the Ancient North Siberians. So they got DNA from these teeth, these children's teeth. And one of the things that was interesting is that it didn't appear that these two children were interbred. I mean, or were a product of inbreeding, meaning that there needed to be, for this definition, of larger population in the area of 500 or more individuals for that to have been possible. They have thousands of artifacts, mostly animal bones, ivory, stone tools, evidence of human habitation, and at this site known as the Yena rhinoceros horn site, which was discovered in 2001. So the Yena rhinoceros horn site has all these artifacts, but just two human remains of these disposable teeth that were found and sequenced. Interesting thing about the sequencing, these are not related to Siberians or really so much modern day Asians. They're much more closely related to European populations, early European populations of the time. So this is a group that when people were sort of spreading out and taking territories, they think had already gone to Siberia previous to the European Asian split, divergence that took place in Western Eurasia. So a very ancient group. They think they were living there sometime around 31,000 years ago, surviving in an ice age type environment. They were hunting woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses. Yes, there were woolly rhinoceroses in Siberia. So really interesting. Also, part of the larger study, they did DNA analysis of human remains that they found at another site that was dated about 10,000 years old, which is an interesting mix of Siberian, East Asian, and very similar to what would be considered Native American, North American population DNA. So a not a precursor to the Native American populations. It would have been a concurrent population that hadn't made the trek, but they're finding relations in that the crossing over the Bering Strait scenario. It's another puzzle piece that now has a identifiable location genetically, whereas we hypothesized that this took place based on larger gene flows from other ancient people of the times, but this is the closest that we've seen to it. It would have been there long after the trek had been made, but close enough of a family resemblance there too. So a lot of interesting discoveries taking place there. And then the last story I've got for us today. Oh, where's this one? This is researchers at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and the VA Boston healthcare system have uncovered new vital sign for gauging survival and likelihood of having unplanned hospitalization in older patients with blood cancers. It's rather specific. But it all comes down to the speed at which they walk, which we talked about previously. Not long ago. You could predict longevity on a large meta study just on people's self-reported walking speed. And it doesn't take much, people. In this study, published in the journal Blood, which I'm a big fan of because, the researchers report that for every 0.1 meter per second decrease in how fast patients could walk a 4 meter jaunt, the risk of dying unexpectedly, going to the hospital or using the emergency room increased by 22%, 33%, and 34% respectively. Every 0.1 meter per second was a significant increase in your potential dramatic decline. Association, they say, was strongest in patients with non-Hodgkin lymphoma. So so the average patient age in this was up there. It was 79.7. This was not a sprint. This was but still.
They're in the older age category. Yeah.
448 adults and all participated. They had to be 75 years or older. It's just 4 meters. See how fast they make it. But 0.1 meter per second decreases were dramatic in the negative outcomes. Yeah.
So you titled this story "Walk Don't Run," but it should really be called "Run Don't Walk."
Yeah, pick up the pace.
Yeah.
But it's one of these things like what comes first? Yeah, it's is it are we just recognizing that they are in a more declined state because the walking pace is a little bit shorter, or do we correlate it to the other study that showed that people who walk faster live longer? And because that's also sort of the interesting thing about this is that they it was the correlation remained regardless of the aggressiveness of the cancer that these people had. So you could have a more aggressive cancer, but if you walked a little bit faster, you did not see the dramatic negative outcomes. So whatever you're doing, we don't know why. It's all correlative. It means nothing yet, but pick up the pace a little bit. Just consciously think about it. Walk a little faster than you did yesterday and walk a little bit faster tomorrow as well.
Walk fast. Chase those children. Young blood. Be young forever. That's right. The fountain of youth. We will find it. No, that's not what this is about. But still.
I'll take it, though. I will take one.
Take it.
One, please.
Have we come to the end of our show?
I think we have.
I think we have also. Thank you for another great show. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this show. Thank you to Fada for helping in the YouTube chat room, for social media and show notes help. Thank you to Identity4 for helping to record the show. Thank you to Gord McLeod for helping in our chat room to maintain things, keep things above board. We do love all you chatters too. Thank you for chatting and asking questions and making comments. It makes it so fun. And thank you to our Patreon sponsors. Thank you to Paul Disney, Richard Onemus, Ed Dyer, Andy Gross, Stu Pollock, Philip Shane, Ken Hayes, Harrison Prather, Charlene Henry, Joshua Fury, Steve DeBell, Alex Wilson, Tony Steele, Craig Landon, Mark Massaros, Jack, Matthew Litwin, Jason Roberts, Bill K., Bob Calder, Time Jumper 319, Eric Knapp, Richard, Brian Condren, Dave Neighbor, David Williams, Corinne Benton, Adam LaJoy, Sarah Chavis, Rodney, Tiffany Boyd, John Bertram, Mountain Sloth, Seth O'Gradney, Stephen Alberon, John Ratnasrami, Dave Friedel, Daryl Myshak, Andrew Swanson, Paul Ronovich, Sue Dostrick, Dave Wilkinson, Ben Bignell, Richard Porter, Noodles, Kevin Reardon, Christoph Zuckerek, Ashish Pants, Ulysses Adkins, Artyom, Rick Ramus, Paul, John McKee, Jason Olds, Brian Carrington, Christopher Dreyer, Lisa Suzuki, Jim Drapeau, Greg Riley, Sean Lamb, Ben Rothig, Steve Leisman, Kurt Larson, Rudy Garcia, Marjorie, Gary S., Robert, Greg Briggs, Brendan Minish, Christopher Rappin, Flying Out, Aaron Luthen, Matt Sutter, Mark Hessenflow, Kevin Parachan, Byron Lee, and EO. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. And if you are interested in supporting us on Patreon, you can find information at TWIS.org. It's where you can find information for a lot of things about TWIS. And you can also tell people that they can find information about TWIS there. We'll be back next week, Wednesday evening, 8 p.m. Pacific time, broadcasting live as we do. But if you are not able to join us in the chat room and on our YouTube channel, then you can always find us as a podcast and our archived videos later on. You can find everything through YouTube or TWIS.org.
Thank you for enjoying the show. TWIS is also available in your iTunes directory. Just look for This Week in Science anywhere in the Apple Marketplace. Yes.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes are available on our website. That's at www.twis.org, where you can also make comments and start conversations with the hosts or other listeners while you're there.
Or you can leave and contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twistminion@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twist.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, somewhere in your subject line. Otherwise, your email will be spam filtered into oblivion. You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jackson Fly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes to you in the night, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from this show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. This week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer, and it shouldn't be news, that what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just get understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. And this week in science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma gondii. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. Science. I've got a laundry list of items I want to address, from stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. So how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This Week in Science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say, and if you've learned anything from the words that we've said, then please just remember it's all in your head. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. Science. This Week in 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 Science.
I keep hitting the wrong keyboard. Hey, everybody, it's the after show. It's time for the after show, the after show, the after show. It's time now for the after show. Please don't go. Or you can if you want, but it's the after show. I'm closing windows, tabs all over the place. I'm closing tabs, gonna talk science. Yeah, sorry, Blair. I didn't mean to be slamming your laptop in the chat room during this last song.
No, it's walking real slow if you catch my drift.
I know you've talked about it before, and I thought
Yeah.
people were paying attention and keeping
Yeah.
up, and then they're talking about me being a mean girl over here.
Yeah. No.
Tech news mean girl, and I was just saying what I thought was an obvious
What?
fact.
No, I just
When Blair gets a new computer,
yeah, it's
then maybe I will
everything's fine.
fine. No, but they Hot Dog was wondering, I think it was question Blair at Kiki, Blair and would like to know
Yeah,
what
see-
software you're using to do the podcast. Right now it's just Google Hangouts and
Yeah.
Blair can do it no problem.
Yeah, so I understand. It was a conversation in Discord where everyone else was saying, "Oh, we want to get TWIS on Twitch,"
Yes.
and they were saying, they were asking all the reasons why we haven't made that switch fully, and we were talking about a bunch of things, wanting to be able to simulcast on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
And I also mentioned that in the current situation, I do not have the software or hardware to host if you were not hosting. But also there's some barriers to having guests on. And so there was all of these questions about what software it was. I don't actually know, but I know I don't have it. So it's right now it is moot. But
yeah, I use
that was the
vMix.
conversation that happened before.
Yeah. I use vMix, and I was just thinking about like how many licenses, like my license, how many installs it allows, and It may be the kind of thing, it's only allowed to be on one computer at a time, but it may be the kind of thing that if you downloaded it and had it and used my license, if you're only using it for the TWIS broadcast when I'm not around, then it might be okay. So, yeah, we should test it sometime.
Mhm.
But I also am concerned that because it's decent, hefty software, and it takes some setting up, and yeah. I mean, you could load it and try it and see if it works, and it could
It's
be, and it could also, but there's also, I had to pay more to get a bigger internet to be able to do stuff with vmix on
Mhm.
Twitch.
Yeah.
I had to get a bigger internet connection to be able to do it, and so hence my comments not being tech mean girl,
Yeah,
but
I know.
just talking
Everybody
reality.
take a big fat chill pill.
Yeah, and Gord, yeah, I mean, it's true. Blair could also possibly do OBS. Like if Blair wanted to download the Open Broadcast System, um, a lot of people use OBS. It is free and very good. I don't know that OBS, like what I don't know how OBS allows you to bring people in
Mhm.
from different calls and stuff like that. So Gord, maybe you could help us if we want to figure
Yeah.
that out. I got vmix because it has its call vmix call involved, which is it takes care of it. It's a browser based video call system that I don't have to mess with. Um, and so that's why I got vmix.
Yeah,
But
I think that's something that makes our show particularly interesting in our tech needs is that we have this kind of three-way call going.
yeah, and yep,
Yeah. So it's definitely it's an extra hurdle, which my whole thing is uh I don't want to cause a whole bunch of weird stuff trying to see what's going to work on my computer if we're not sure what we're going to use, how we're going to use it, or when we're going to use it, because technology changes so often. So,
yeah,
if we end up making the move, if something happens with Google, I will be more than happy to jump in, download all the things, try all
yep,
the things, do all the
yep.
things. But until that happens, it seems like a lot of wasted effort, personally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Gordon Fata are asking about Tom Merritt and Daily Tech News Show,
Mhm.
and I know they are changing things up, and it's work that Roger and another person have done to figure out a new setup for them, and they are making the jump to Twitch. And actually, this week I was on the Daily Tech News Show and was thinking, hey, maybe I should talk with Roger and find out because I think it's pretty much Tom knows what's going on, but I think it was pretty much Roger and someone else who
Mhm.
figured out all their tech needs to move, and they do very similar to what we do, bringing in callers and all that. So, um, yeah, so it's already on my mind to reach out to them. And speaking, I know they just jumped. They jumped, but they did one crossover where they simulcast to YouTube this week because they wanted to make sure everyone knew they were going
Mhm.
over to Twitch, but they're not going to be doing YouTube anymore, I think, at all. Maybe they might upload stuff after, but they're not doing live anymore, which is going to be interesting. Um, yeah, totally stable geniuses. Yes. Yes, yes, Fada. Um, but on the Daily Tech News Show front, now that Justin has come back and you're here, I was speaking with them this week, and Tom is still very keen on doing TWIS crossovers. And so I am going to be sending emails between you both and Roger, who does their scheduling. So the two of you can schedule to be on episodes of the Daily Tech News Show.
Fun!
Yeah. So the thing about doing their show is you have to be able to do it like it's like it starts at 1:30 in the afternoon. So
On a weekend?
no, it's Monday through Friday.
Okay. There are days of the week I can make that work.
Yeah, so if there are days of the week you can make it work, then you make it work. But if you can't make it work, you can't make it work. But we're gonna do
Take
a
a long
crossover.
lunch, Justin.
Yeah, and so at some point we're gonna have the crossover. So Sarah, Tom has been on the show. Sarah is gonna come on the show. She's fun. Um, and maybe Roger also. Yeah, we're gonna have hosting crossovers. It'll be
That's
fun.
awesome.
Oh, sounds exciting.
Yeah, we're gonna bringing people in, doing stuff. Sarah is awesome, Gord. I totally agree. She's great, and it'll be fun to have her on the show. I like the idea of crossovers, and I want to figure out how to do a what the if crossover,
Yeah,
but
that
maybe
sounds very fun.
we have to go to New York and because
Ooh.
I love New York. That's where they are.
That's why
Or maybe we can meet them somewhere at a science festival and do some kind of
Oh.
special episode. I mean, we could always just do an episode, but I kind of feel like the way they do their show and the way we do our show, like if we could figure out how to merge them in some interesting way for an audience, like could be a really great live show.
Yeah. Sounds
Yeah.
awesome.
Those two, us, and then maybe like a scientist or two, and everybody like I don't know if we can figure out,
Yeah.
because theirs, as Philip describes it, is Philip Shane. It's already a game show of sorts.
Yeah.
So let's make it. Yeah.
I
let's
like
take-
the whole concept of improvised thinking. too.
Yeah.
Sounds like a
Yeah.
plus.
Yeah. Not too thought out.
Which is kind of how I go about.
Mhm.
I think that would just be normal day, Justin. But it sounds like fun. Yeah.
It
I
would
have
be fun.
questions about next week.
Yes. Speaking of, I forgot to mention that during the show because we were all over the place. Next week, we're going to Santa Fe. Next week, Wednesday, we're normal.
Yeah.
Then we go to Santa Fe. Justin, when do you go to Santa Fe?
Yeah, you got to send me those tickets again. It's Thursday.
So I fly on Friday.
I fly Thursday.
Okay.
I think, Justin, I think you might fly Wednesday, don't you?
Oh. Whatever the 12th is.
Justin's frozen, so that's interesting.
What just happened there? I didn't do that.
I have
Oh, yeah. Maybe I am flying Wednesday now. I don't know why.
June 12th.
That's a Wednesday.
That's Wednesday.
June 12th. So you may be missing next week's show?
I guess so.
All right. So time to find somebody else to do the show with us.
Ooh.
Boy, we thought that one through.
Oh my.
Just that little detail. Didn't think about it.
Well, yeah.
Marshall and I were considering today extending our stay in Santa Fe for another day. Maybe.
When are you currently flying back?
Monday,
Okay.
about the same time as you all.
Okay.
So we would all kind of go back around the same time to Albuquerque and everything. But
that's what I was going to ask about was how you're planning on getting from Albuquerque to Santa Fe.
apparently there is a train or a shuttle or something that everybody was like, you just get on the shuttle and it takes you there. It takes an hour or so and it's really easy.
Okay. Because I would also we could rent a car. I don't know what you're planning on doing on like Sunday and Monday because we could potentially rent a car.
Yeah, there is also that. Yeah.
So okay.
I don't know.
2 things, 3 things, maybe
4 or 5 things.
I need to find out when I'm flying again.
Better.
But you could resend me that because I don't know what I did with it.
Just look at how much a rental car would be that would fit a lot of people in it.
Can we get a van?
Yeah, a van.
The second thing is we should coordinate closer. I'll be in Albuquerque already.
Yeah, you'll have to. You
and
can either
so-
just meet us in Santa Fe or meet us back at the airport.
Yeah, I'll probably want to pick you up at the airport. Sounds like a reasonable thing to do.
Yeah.
And travel together from there. And then,
Yeah.
There is a couple. There's a few things I think that we might want to go and check out in Santa Fe. So whether we Uber a van, Lyft a van, is there another one? Stitcher, Screecher. I don't know how many of these things there are now.
Mhm.
We can.
How do I forward this? Why is it
I
not
don't know
allowing
if
me
we
to
need. I
forward
don't
it?
know if renting a car is a thing people need to do anymore. If you're staying within the city limits.
I did it when I went to Galveston, and it was very helpful.
But that's Galveston, don't you?
Well, this is New Mexico. Isn't New Mexico very sprawling?
Yeah, I don't know. I have a feeling Santa Fe has modern transportation things, like the Stitcher,
Oof.
Spreaker, Lyft.
Minivans are so expensive. Airport. Let me just see AVR real quick. What's the I don't know how to spell Albuquerque, guys.
That's not spellable. It's fine.
It's hard to spell.
If you get to ALBE and it didn't populate,
It's ALBU, my friend. That's what I just found out.
Albuquerque.
Yeah, Albu.
Albuquerque.
87106.
I still have some adulting to do about this trip. Went to the zoo today.
Aw,
Trip.
good old Sacramento Zoo.
Yep, school field trip. So I had 3 wild ones running around with me. It was about 100 degrees by the time we left. It was brutal.
Yeah.
The animals don't seem to like it when it's really hot. They become very inactive.
Yeah, this is the thing. This is the great lie that is perpetuated about zoos is people assume when it's foggy out or it's a little bit on the chilly side that the animals are miserable.
Oh, they love it. They're
That's
all
how they
moving around.
want it.
Yeah.
They have hair on their body.
Mhm.
They don't want it to be 100 degrees.
Lion was on its back.
Oh yeah, I bet.
It's actually kind of cute.
Legs akimbo.
Yeah, just like spread. Like I need any bit of breeze coming through to just go on my underside, please. The new exhibit, newish.
They have a new exhibit? I don't even know.
Newish exhibit that was super popular was the meerkats.
Meerkats.
Meerkats. No, meerkats.
What?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Isn't it meerkat? It's not. It's
What's a meerkat?
meerkat?
What?
Meerkats. Super cute, and
Oh
but
my
they're really active, running around and like saying hi to everybody.
Oh yeah.
Well,
They're weasels, so they're
but
still
they were-
not to be trusted.
No, I don't trust them. But they were like standing up. They were right up to the glass, like following the kids, like being really fun. And
Nice.
the otters were.
Do you
usually
know
the
what kind of otters they were?
freshwater?
All otters are freshwater. Well, not all.
The
Some.
otters are typically you find them most active on like a rainy day, but
Mhm.
they were out and about, which was I thought unusual. The aardvark was sleeping in full sun. It has like an enclosure you can go to in the shade.
I love an aardvark.
Sleeping except for his ears. We're sort of tracking like loud noises. That was pretty cool.
Nice.
Draft zebras,
That's
they
awesome.
don't care about the heat.
Well, they're definitely they prefer a more temperate climate, but
They seemed fine.
Yeah,
Red
they're
River
fine.
hogs were out Red River hogging.
Yeah.
The primates were all down for the count.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. None of the primates wanted anything to do with today.
What did I miss?
Zoo field trip today.
Zoo field trip. Awesome.
Sacramento.
Enjoy. Oh, Sacramento Zoo. Awesome.
It's a good zoo.
Yeah. Okay, there's that one.
All right, Blair, quick challenge. Name a bad zoo.
Well, Paris Zoo is shut down. That was a very bad zoo.
That sounds like a bad zoo. Okay.
It was a lot of grass and chain link. Yeah. Trying to think. I've been to so many. So there are some zoos that I get very frustrated with their pedestrian flow. This is something I get very frustrated about. I should be able to walk an entire zoo and not have to double back and not miss anything.
Yeah.
There should be a very clear pathway to walk and see everything. And there's not a lot of zoos that have figured that out.
Sacramento Zoo is okay. Let's go back past everything we just saw so we can see that one thing we don't want to miss. And then we're going to double back again so we can get out of that place to go see. Sacramento Zoo is that constantly.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
Did you guys hear about the bear? All right, Blair, this will
In
make
Davis. Yes. What happened?
So, okay, Kiki, Arboretum, the redwood patch, which is kind of close to the little shopping area. It's like downtown Davis.
It's almost like downtown. Yeah.
Somebody spotted a bear. Yeah.
How did it get there? Like it had to travel across Sacramento, across the causeway.
I think it came from the other way, possibly, because we occasionally there will be a bear that will show up in Woodland. They think this is the same bear that showed up in Vacaville a little while ago, which is weird, but it's sort of going the roundabout route.
It's a coastal bear.
Well, or at least it's coming. They think they moved it an hour and a half north. I don't know who they released. Like, there's nowhere that's rural 90 miles from here anymore.
No.
So they just put the bear in some strange neighborhood. It's just gonna wander into some other town now. I love writing because they tranquilizer darted it.
Yeah.
And then it climbed a tree.
Yeah. And
that happens. That's one of the reasons they try not to trank specifically black bears, because this is a thing that black bears do all the time. It takes usually even a good sedative will take about 30 minutes. So this is why when people say, like, when there are tragedies and zoos and stuff like that, people always go like, well, why didn't they just tranquilize the animal? It's because, first of all, it takes about 15 minutes for the vet staff to mix the drugs, because you can't just have drugs of the varying concentrations and volumes just sitting around. So you have to
estimate the size of the bear. It's usually weight. It's per kilogram.
Yeah. So you have to figure out what species it is and how big they are, mix the drugs, load the drugs, get to the location. And then after you get a tranquilizer in an animal, first of all, it usually pisses them off, which is dangerous if they're in any sort of human space. And secondly, it takes up to a half an hour for a sedative to take effect. A lot of the time, if there's lots of adrenaline happening, the first sedative doesn't even work. And then you need to go for another one.
You got the adrenaline going, so your first shot misses. Yeah, I get it.
No, the animal has the adrenaline going. So their blood processes the sedative in a different way than anticipated. And then, so anyway, that's why they try not to trank black bears. They try to catch them without tranquilizing them if they can, is because they're like, uh-oh, I've been shot up a tree.
This one was, but well into the city and campus. There's a bit, there is an edge. It is sort of on the edge of town from a very specific, but it's all ag land and it's all inhabited. And it's amazing that this bear made it to this area without being spotted. And this happened.
I'm looking at there's a lot of wild-land out there, and I'm, So Woodland, Davis, though, it's, between Davis, there's ag land
or city.
There's trees, but there's Davis to Lake Berryessa, it gets more and more empty space, that's just agricultural and then rural, where it's rolling hills and oak scrub. And then you've got around Lake Berryessa, which probably there's a certain amount of fishing. And then you probably have the creek that comes down next to Winters and into Davis. And so you have this creek that goes Lake Berryessa to Winters to Davis, and then probably even taking this bear all the way from Lake County, where some
Yeah,
big fires were a couple of years ago.
Right, which is what they also think it might have been
Yeah.
driven away from its habitat by those fires. Exactly.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
interesting.
we see mountain lions in like Sausalito and Novato too.
There was
Bear.
one. No,
Yeah,
there was one.
but
there
I'm
was one in
saying there.
Sacramento.
So
There was one in Sacramento
bear,
in Natomas, in this very suburban neighborhood.
bear,
I
and
just
mountain
crossed through it.
lion, um, range size are actually pretty similar.
Oh.
And so it's pretty interesting. It's just a situation where if you have wild spaces, even if they're actually smaller than an average range for an animal is, sometimes that can be enough for an animal to go unnoticed for a pretty long period of time. Or
Yeah.
in some cases, like with coyotes, they'll go from space to space at dawn or dusk, and then you won't see them, and they're kind of hopscotching from one very small wild
Right.
space to another, and you don't realize it because they're actually very good at avoiding human contact.
Right. They're
And
moving
that
at
could be
night.
what this
Mhm.
is. This bear could have hopscotched from there's enough green space in the Sacramento area that
Yeah.
I feel like you could definitely hopscotch from place to place down the Delta towards Davis, and
Or
eventually you have to
yeah.
run into somebody. But
But
From
I've
Berryessa to Winters to Davis, down the Poudre Creek, Greenland. I mean, yeah, if you're moving at night, I can see it, but
yeah.
But what I'm
It-
assuming is that
no bear in my
dozens of
entire
people-
life has always mountain lions, never bears.
they're slinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dozens, though, I am assuming, of people saw the bear, corner of the eye, driving by, maybe full on. Nah.
Thought it was a stray dog or
Big
something.
dog.
There's
That's
no
Yeah.
that's a funny
way.
looking dog.
Yeah.
Saw it and just
Yeah.
completely discounted the idea that it was a bear.
Yep, there's no way it's a bear because we all know what? Bears? Bears in the Central Valley? That is just nothing
I'm
we've
not
never heard
telling,
of.
but they
Yeah.
Ever.
I think also black bears are a lot smaller than people expect bears to be. And I could see how, especially out of the corner of an eye, your brain would just tell you, that's a big dog.
And that's the
Yeah.
thing too. I've only seen brown bears, and
Up in the Sierras,
up in
right?
the Sierras, and
Yeah.
you will not mistake them for anything else. They
Mhm.
are
Big bears.
massive,
Bears. Big bears.
big bears. I got it within less than 6 feet of one once, and let me tell you, that thing was just its size was, and it was cold, and so as it breathed, there was this, like smoke of steam coming out of its nose. Yeah. Don't mess with bears. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, not
Don't
to be
mess-
messed with for sure.
No bears.
But I love how they just like found a place to. How do you know where to deposit a bear?
There's a whole network of not only people knowing where to deposit bears, but bears have a strike system. So the grizzly bears at the San Francisco Zoo, for example, had their 2 strikes. And after that, an animal is euthanized or placed. And it's because if you move a bear enough times and they keep going back to human space, that means they are completely conditioned to look for human space to find food.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, there is no way for a bear to live functionally in the wild without endangering human lives. And, more than just, valuing human lives over bear lives, there's this whole issue of if there is an altercation between a human who has a gun and a bear, humans can also get shot in that scenario. There's all sorts of bad stuff that can happen. So at a certain point, the decision has to be made to remove that bear from the wild because they can't go be a wild bear.
Yeah,
and so this vast network kind of figures all of that out. And then based on that, they can figure out how old the bear is, what the bear's temperament is, all this kind of stuff, if there's space in zoos or wildlife centers. And from all of that, that animal is either placed or euthanized.
And I think in a bear like this, they should have probably kept it in one of these rural community hodgepodge zoos type things. It made it to a pretty suburban neighborhood, an arboretum on campus of a university of 30,000 people, something like this, undetected, and was just chilling out and didn't have an altercation. I think that bear is probably already too acclimatized to being close to humans and should not have just been sent to the wild.
Well, everybody gets a
Like-
second chance. That's the
Like Blair
policy.
said, it's a strike policy. And so if
Yeah.
they catch the bear again, that's another strike on its record. But
Yeah.
you don't, just one time and it's not.
Run,
It's
bear!
not-
Run!
Usually
Yeah,
it's a
run, bear, run.
two strike policy for bears. So the idea is if they did it once, maybe they got a nice treat from the trash, but they still will go and forage like a normal bear. If they do it twice, that's a good indicator that they will not be able to go out there and be a wild
What's
bear.
normal
So
foraging? This is
I think
ag
there's
land. There's
I
normal
know.
forage growing everywhere. That's what we
yes,
do here.
but human food is always better for a bunch of reasons. So if it's available, if they're
And
near it, they're going to go for it.
I just think the thing that I understand all the things that you're saying,
Well, that's very close to one
Blair,
of the better sushi restaurants in town.
but the issue, there's human encroachment, and then there's
Yeah.
also, like we were saying, like the fires in Lake County that
Mhm,
destroyed a huge amount of habitat and probably pushed a large number of animals out, which is maybe why that bear is out wandering, because its range is now different, because
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know where to find food. So is it that it's going for human food, or is it just that it's just figuring out its new life?
Oh, absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think the fires especially can cause fragmentation, which is a huge
Yeah.
problem for bears because their habitat's so huge. People think all the time like, oh, well, there's this wild space and there's this wild space and there's this wild space. But if a
Bear's
bear
habitat
can't
is like
safely
all of
get
it.
from one place to another because there's scorched earth in the middle or a freeway, then they don't actually have that much functional space. So yeah, I think that the fires, especially, I mean, that's been a huge driver in getting mountain lions in a lot of the more urban areas in the Bay Area, is because after the Sonoma fires, a lot of mountain lions were pushed south towards San Francisco, and we had a mountain lion in the Presidio last year. So
It's
there's
crazy. Yeah.
there's all sorts of weird stuff happening that kind of it pushes us back together in a way that is not conducive.
Yeah. Eric in AK, Alaska, is saying, Blair, we had a brown bear that was added to the Alaska Zoo after it broke into the zoo twice. After that,
You really
it
wanted to
kept
be there.
saying,
Put me
I
in the zoo.
I just
Look
really
at
want to
the
be
things
in
that
this
I can
place.
do.
Usually the animals are breaking out. This one's like, I'm breaking in, man.
Yeah.
Life looks better in there.
Well, there are things that are pretty convenient about being in a zoo.
I'm-
On-call vet staff, square meals every day, enrichment,
can't make it on the outside.
exercise.
I just can't make it on the outside. I need the routines of the institution.
Yeah. I just want to live in a all expenses paid resort year round.
This is a bear breaking into the zoo.
There you go. It's like breaking into a sandals.
I want to wait. Well, I want to know though. Did they let the bear in? Because I would just at that point. All right, we need the bear in the zoo.
Well, that's what Eric says in the chat room, is that it broke into the zoo twice. So then they kept it.
Oh,
They
good.
placed
Okay,
it.
that is
Because that's the
happy
two
ending.
strike policy. That bear is not going to look for its own food. It's going to
No,
look for
I
humans.
love it. That bear knew what it was doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and for a prey animal in a zoo, no predators, no looking over the
No,
shoulder,
nothing. Yeah.
just living life. Don't have to
Oh my
compete for resources.
Living life. Okay. So next week,
Yes.
no bears on the
Apparently not gonna be
show.
on the show.
Well,
Apparently, Justin will be in Albuquerque.
yeah, apparently Justin will be waiting for us at our next location.
Yeah, we will text you, I guess, next Friday to coordinate arriving at the airport
Great.
so that we can all travel to Santa Fe together.
Perfect.
Did you receive? No, I probably got it. I received the invitation to the VIP party.
VIP party.
All three of us are going.
Oh.
Girl.
So quick question about that. Do I need to bring nice clothes?
Oh, I
No,
wasn't. No.
It's a sign.
Okay.
No.
I was
No,
not
no.
planning on that. Okay.
Besides, I only have nice clothes. So
Oh.
never an issue for
Excuse me. Yes, please wear your finest Rick and Morty t-shirt.
Oh, and socks.
Yeah.
Rick and Morty socks. One is
that's
Rick
great.
and one is Morty. And I always put Morty on the left because I feel like he gets left behind.
Uh-huh.
And Rick is
Oh
always
my
right.
goodness, your logic.
Uh,
Crazy. Oh my gosh, they named the bear Trouble.
That's
yeah.
great.
Come on, flying out. We
And if
can
you look for
be
this, there is video of the releasing of
very interplanetary.
where they took him in the cage and let him go, and he goes running off in the distance. It looks
Yeah,
like
he's like, "What's wrong with you guys?
looks like a happy ending. Real
One
soon.
minute I'm in a tree, the next minute I'm in a cage.
And sore. Oh, it must be sore.
My
Oh,
butt hurts."
everything hurts.
Yeah, so not packing anything nice. Okay, got it. What about what are we prepping for the show? Are we
All right,
prepping some
we-
old stories that are planetary in nature, or do you only want
Nothing.
this week?
Nothing that we've ever talked about before.
Okay.
I think it would. So let's see. We will be interviewing. Hold on. Let me get Jenna's email here. Festival. Zoop. Scrolling down. Okay. Scheduled 4:15 to 5:45 p.m. There will be time. The previous podcast, Planetary Radio, is before
We're
us.
only doing a half an hour?
No, it's 90 minutes.
Oh.
4:15 to 5:45.
Oh, I did not hear that. I heard 4:15 to 4:45. Whoa.
It's
Sorry.
5:45, so we have 90 minutes there.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm hoping we have one interview that is science related. I would like to have a couple more stories. I was also thinking it would be fun to get another, maybe grab another interview while we're there, see what we can do.
So what would you like me to prep? That's kind of my question. So I'm feeling like an animal corner might not be super appropriate unless it's somehow
animals in space,
planetarily related.
Yeah, so look at interplanetaryfest.org and the schedule. Or no, maybe the lineup we better look at. June 15th. Yeah, so we've got Extremophiles. Oceans first, space second is another topic people are going to be talking about. Let's see. They're going to be screening the movie Alien.
Ooh.
So we can kind of, take inspiration from the idea of, interesting life on the planet. Things like this week talking about the naked mole rats and its relatives.
Shoot, I should have saved it.
No, it's fine. You'll find another one. But yeah, like thinking about, okay, animals and how do animals adapt to their environments and animals as aliens.
Okay.
Life
as aliens.
And then I would just talk about humans.
Mm-hmm.
We're the most alien form of life on this planet.
Yeah.
Ooh, there's a beer garden.
There is. Did you see it's the Area 21?
Yes. I love it all.
Funny.
This will be fun. Ooh, free screening of Planet of the Apes. That's fun. Let's see. Ooh, there's a commodity market. Uh-oh. Better leave some room in my suitcase.
Dun, dun, dun.
Cryptocurrency. What? Microbes.
Yep.
Okay, oceans. Good, good, good. Oceans first, space second. That sounds right up my alley.
Let's see. Oh, timeshare in space.
Music of spheres. Oh, there's lots of stuff. Okay.
It's going to be packed.
All right, I'll just have to. Interesting. To come up with an angle.
All right. I gotta go.
Let's see. Why do you have to run away like this all the time?
It's because it's late and I'm an old person.
I don't believe you, but okay.
Should I bring any? Because I don't have much in the way of merch. Should I bring anything? Just trying to plan.
Oh, bring your fancy clothes.
Besides that, I'm already bringing my tuxedo. Don't worry.
Yeah, tardigrades, spiders in space. I like it at NE4.
Spiders in space would be great.
I know. Things put on the outside of the International Space Station. I don't think there were
sounds
animals. It
rude.
wasn't, or tiny animals. Yeah, bacteria. They did put bacteria on the outside of the International Space, algae and bacteria, I believe.
They put 2 of every bacteria.
Oh yeah. Just to see what would happen.
It wasn't the International Space Station. It was the Space Ark. Let's see.
Okay.
So, yeah, next Wednesday. Okay, we won't be talking to Justin. Justin, then you just have to get stories for Saturday next week, and we are theming up with the Interplanetary Festival theme. So, in your own preparation and thinking in the next week or whatever, just kind of look at the Interplanetary website and get some ideas.
I know what interplanetary means.
Do you?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And they all showed up with the same stories.
Yeah. And then I do think, let's see if I can.
That's good. Otherwise, I would suggest not speaking.
Okay. My Alaska. Okay. I'm flying. So Friday, Albuquerque, 3-ish in the afternoon.
Let's see. What's me?
I land at 1:20. I can definitely hang out. Oh wait, but that's my time, I think. Yeah, I hate how they do this. No, they're an hour and ahead.
I arrive 2:30. Sorry, I arrive in Albuquerque at 2:30 next
open
Friday.
my United app here.
I'm just gonna go to the airport with a sign that says, "Does anybody know what plane I'm on?"
Where's Blair?
Yeah, sorry, Justin.
Where's Blair?
Oh yeah, I land at 2:20, so that's perfect.
Okay, we land. Yeah, so 2:20, 2:30. Justin, just try and get to the airport.
When? What day? What hour?
Friday, the 14th, around 2 o'clock, 2:30.
Before that, I need to know what my flight is.
I just sent it to you. I emailed.
Oh, email. Okay, all right. I was looking at the text. I was looking for a text.
I don't have it in the text messages. I got it in my email. I sent you an email. Check your email.
And then on Monday, I'm flying out at 3:25.
Yeah, I fly out at 3:10.
I'm leaving soon.
Perfect.
It's in a week.
It's in a week.
That's why I'm asking so many questions.
That's why we're talking about this.
You silly Billy?
No.
So why you gotta be such a silly Billy sometimes?
That's perspective. That's all. Context and perspective. That's all we're talking The context of me not being able to tell time or dates.
Kiki, am I bringing my laptop?
Of course.
Yes.
Has the answer to that ever been no?
Yes, it
Leave
has.
technology at home.
Yes, it
Leave
has.
your technology at home. We're not going to need.
The first 2 times we went to New York, I think I didn't bring my
didn't bring your
laptop. I just brought printouts.
Oh yeah, that's back when they had paper and printers still. The old days.
So apparently we will have most of the stuff that we need.
Promises.
Yeah,
And
most of
speaking-
the things that
this
we
is how I can
need.
tell it's time for Justin to go. I'm becoming very
We will
sarcastic.
have all the microphones. We'll have a mixer. And I'm going to bring the Mevo and my iPad just in
that's fun.
case they can
Has
make
the-
it work. In case we can make
Has
it
the
work.
Mevo ever worked?
It has worked for video. Audio has always been the problem.
Okay.
So if we can figure out audio, then great. And maybe there's a tech person who can make it work when I can't.
Yeah, this technology we've had for 10 years, we don't know how to make it go.
It's
Yeah.
it's only
They're
been
gonna
probably 4.
They will
Problem is,
have
it's
they will
4 years
have
old.
they will
That's
have a
why it doesn't
laptop.
work.
They will have a laptop there, and I'm sure so for our music and stuff like that, we should definitely bring I'm gonna bring my laptop, you bring your laptop,
Perfect.
and yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
My plan is to very soon get a new laptop and then empty this laptop of pretty much everything but a browser. And then this laptop will be my travel laptop.
Great idea.
And all it needs to do is open iTunes and browse.
Perfect.
That's
Yeah,
my hope once I get a new laptop.
Yeah. And yeah, and maybe I don't know. I don't want to bring a bunch of stuff, but I don't know. Maybe I'm gonna I don't know. Camera, microphone, that kind of stuff for talking to people. That's extra.
Bring a whole suitcase full of t-shirts.
Yeah, I know. I'll be like, I could carry all this stuff. Such an opportunity. Look, my merchandise. But I'm like, I'm so lazy.
It's a lot. It's a lot to take.
It's a lot to travel with, and you have to pack it.
Yeah. I mean,
Anyway.
patches are a good start. Patches and stickers. And
Patches and
pins.
stickers. Badges? Don't need no sticking badges. Yes, Ed, I cannot wait to go see the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum, and I want to see Meow Wolf, and I want to see Santa Fe. And oh yeah, Los Alamos National Lab emailed me and asked if I want to visit.
Can I push buttons?
No,
I want to flip dials, switches, toggle.
I'm like, this is why I need another day.
Oh my goodness.
Hey, Los Alamos. Yeah.
Say goodnight, Justin.
Good night, Justin.
Say goodnight, Blair.
Good night, Blair.
Good
Good
night,
night, Kiki.
Good night, everyone. I hope you all have a wonderful week. I will be back on next Wednesday. We'll be back. We will be back for more This Week in Science. I'll keep you all updated on my Twitch stream for this Friday, scheduling things, but I'm going to do my best to make it happen. And then that's it. I hope everyone has a wonderful science week. We are rounding the corners. Summer is coming. Have a good night's sleep, Justin. Stop being so sarcastic. Good night.
Good night.